The Centauri salvage station hung like a rusted wound in the void of space, a testament to forgotten dreams and discarded technologies. Massive magnetic claws stretched out from its central hub, perpetually sorting through the detritus of 1,000 civilizations. Here, at the ass end of known space, nothing was truly worthless, just waiting for the right kind of crazy to see its potential. Maya Rodriguez stood at the observation deck, her reflection a ghost against the starfield. Once a rising star in the Terran Expeditionary Engineering Corps, she was now nothing more than a professional scavenger. 3 years of bureaucratic hearings, 1 spectacular court-martial, and a reputation in tatters, all for being right about something nobody wanted to hear. The station's comm system crackled. Incoming salvage drop from the Centauri Consortium, a bored voice announced. Preliminary classification, total loss. Maya's augmented eyes, a reminder of her military past, zoomed in automatically. The incoming cargo container tumbled end over end, its surface scarred by micrometeorite impacts and radiation burns. Most would see junk. Maya saw possibility. The container crashed into the station's receiving bay with a thunderous impact that reverberated through the metal deck. Clouds of exotic particulates billowed from its fractured shell, setting off every environmental warning in the station. Standard procedure would be quarantine, decontamination, then sorting. But Maya was anything but standard. She slipped past the automated security systems, a skill that had both made and broken her military career, and entered the receiving bay. Protective nanomesh shimmered around her body, adapting to the potentially toxic environment. The container was a nightmare of twisted metal, quantum-locked alloys, and components that seemed to shift and change even as she watched. Most of the salvage crews would have walked away. The readings were all wrong. Radiation signatures that shouldn't exist. Quantum entanglement markers that defied current scientific understanding. But Maya saw something else. A small data core caught her eye. It was barely the size of her palm, but something about it was different. Unlike the surrounding debris, it seemed to pulse with a soft, almost imperceptible light. When her augmented hand touched it, a cascade of encrypted data flooded her neural interface. For a moment, the universe seemed to hold its breath. The data was a cacophony of impossible information. Star charts from civilizations that had never existed, technological schematics that violated every known law of physics, and at the core, a transmission. Encrypted, fractured, but unmistakably a message. Alarms blared. Station security was closing in. Maya's fingers closed around the data core. In that moment, she knew her life was about to change forever. The scraps around her weren't just junk. They were a puzzle, a challenge, and she was going to solve it, no matter the cost. A sudden explosion rocked the salvage bay. The container she'd been investigating erupted in a burst of quantum-shifted energy, creating a momentary rift that defied everything Maya thought she knew about space and time. Something was watching. Something was waiting. And it had just found its way to her. The safe house was anything but safe. Converted from an abandoned cargo container on the station's outer rim, it hummed with improvised technology that would make any official engineering team weep or arrest her on the spot. Maya's first recruit was Kai Chen, a quantum dynamics specialist who'd been kicked out of 3 different research institutions for being too unconventional. He stood hunched over a holographic display, fingers dancing through impossible geometric projections of the mysterious data core. "This shouldn't exist," Kai muttered, his augmented eyes flickering with streams of data. "The encryption is alive. It's not just coded. It's adapting." Their second team member was Dr. Aria Okoi, a xenomaterial expert who'd spent years studying impossible alloys. Her prosthetic arm, a masterpiece of adaptive engineering, constantly shifted and reconfigured as she examined the technological scraps. "These components," she said, holding up a piece of quantum-locked material that seemed to exist in multiple states simultaneously, "they're not just from different technologies. They're from different realities." A warning pulse from Maya's neural interface interrupted their work. Someone was hunting them. The first attempt came 3 days later. A precision strike team from the Galactic Salvage Consortium, disguised as maintenance workers, attempted to breach their safe house. Maya's jury-rigged defense systems, cobbled together from the very scraps they were studying, came to life. Quantum-shifted energy fields flickered. Adaptive camouflage turned the container into a ghost. The attackers found themselves trapped in localized time dilation fields, moving in slow motion while the team worked frantically. Kai's fingers flew across the holographic interface. "The data core is more than a storage device," he revealed, excitement and terror mixing in his voice. "It's a key. To what? I'm not entirely sure." A holographic message burst to life. Fragmented, ancient, speaking in a language that seemed to exist between mathematical equations and poetry. Fragments of star charts, glimpses of technologies beyond human comprehension. "We're not just building a ship," Maya realized, her voice cutting through the tension. "We're reconstructing something that was deliberately broken. Aria's prosthetic arm reconfigured, producing a tool that was part diagnostic scanner, part quantum manipulator. These scraps? They're pieces of a weapon, or a message, or both." The final team member arrived unexpectedly. Jack Rivera, a former Black Ops engineer with a reputation for impossible solutions. He carried nothing but a battered quantum-locked briefcase and eyes that had seen too much. "I know what you're trying to do," Jack said, not asking, but stating, "and every power in the galaxy is going to try to stop you." Another attack came. This time, more sophisticated. A targeted quantum disruption pulse that should have fried every electronic system in their safe house. Instead, the scraps they were studying absorbed the energy, transformed it. The data core pulsed. For a microsecond, something that might have been a face, or a star system, flickered in its holographic projection. They were building something impossible, something that would change everything. And someone desperately wanted to prevent that from happening. The first test of their prototype drove 3 technicians permanently mad. It wasn't the physical construction that broke them. It was what happened when they activated the quantum core. Reality itself seemed to hiccup, bending around the device like light through a prism made of broken dreams. Maya watched through reinforced quantum-shielded glass as Kai initiated the startup sequence. The entire laboratory, a converted deep space research platform deliberately hidden in the radiation clouds of a dying star system, began to vibrate at frequencies that shouldn't exist. Quantum synchronization at 37%. Aria called out, her voice tight. Her prosthetic arm was now a constantly shifting mass of adaptive nanomaterials, responding to the energy signatures that were bleeding through from somewhere else. Jack stood perfectly still, eyes tracking something only his enhanced neural implants could see. "We're not just building a ship," he muttered. "We're opening a door." The first test subject, a volunteer from a long list of desperate souls with nothing left to lose, began to change. His body became translucent, then solid, then something in between. Quantum states overlapped. For a moment, they could see multiple versions of him, young, old, alive, dead, existing in parallel. "Containment field stabilizing," Kai shouted, his fingers dancing across holographic interfaces that seemed to breathe and pulse with living light. A message burst through the quantum core. Not in words, exactly, but in pure information, a cascade of data that threatened to overwhelm their systems. Star charts from civilizations that had never existed. Technological schematics that violated every known law of physics. Alarms erupted. Not the standard warning systems, but something deeper, something primal. 3 alien intelligence agencies activated simultaneously. The Zentari Consortium, the Clax Imperium, the Shadow Nexus. Each had been tracking their progress, each now realizing the true potential of what was being created. Maya felt something shift in her perception. The quantum core was doing something to them, to her. Memories that weren't her own flickered at the edges of her consciousness. Technological knowledge beyond human comprehension began to take root. "We're changing," Jack said, a note of terror in his voice. "The ship is changing us." A quantum rupture tore through the research platform. For a microsecond, they could see multiple versions of their laboratory, some destroyed, some thriving, some occupied by beings that defied description. The volunteer test subject began to speak, but it wasn't his voice. It was something else, something older. "We were waiting," the voice said, emerging from multiple points simultaneously. "You have found the key." Aria's prosthetic arm fully transformed, becoming something that was part machine, part living organism. "The scraps were never just scraps," she whispered. "They were a message, a test." Outside the platform, space itself began to warp. Alien vessels dropped out of quantum transit, each one bringing with it the promise of destruction. Maya understood then. They weren't just building a ship. They were rebuilding something that had been deliberately forgotten. And the universe was about to remember. The first battle came without warning. 12 alien battle cruisers emerged from quantum transit, their weapon signatures painting the void with deadly geometric precision. They'd found the hidden research platform, and they intended to erase everything. Maya stood on the bridge of their prototype ship, a vessel that was more organic than mechanical, more living intelligence than mere technology. The quantum core pulsed at its heart, no longer just a component, but something closer to a living brain. "Incoming primary attack vector," Kai called out, his voice distorted. The quantum transformation had changed him. His neural interfaces now seemed to breathe, to think independently of his physical form. The ship responded before Maya could give a command. Adaptive hull plates shifted, quantum-locked molecules rearranging themselves faster than light could track. Where standard ships would have shields, this vessel had something more, a living membrane that absorbed, analyzed, and transformed incoming energy. The first volley of alien plasma weapons hit and disappeared. Not deflected, not absorbed, simply erased from existence. Aria's prosthetic arm had become something else entirely, part of the ship's living systems, interfacing directly with the quantum core. "They don't understand," she said, her voice a strange harmonic that seemed to come from multiple sources. "We're not just defending. We're learning." Jack tracked the incoming attack vectors, his enhanced neural implants working in perfect synchronization with the ship's emergent intelligence. Battle strategies formed and dissolved in microseconds, each potential response analyzed across multiple quantum realities. The alien vessels regrouped, switching to more exotic weapons. Gravitational disruptors, quantum destabilization missiles, weapons that could tear apart the fabric of space-time itself. The ship laughed. It wasn't a sound. It was a quantum pulse, a mathematical rejection of the very concept of destruction. One by one, the alien vessels began to change. Hull plates became translucent. Weapon systems turned inward. Crews found themselves experiencing multiple versions of reality simultaneously. Maya realized they weren't fighting. They were communicating. A message burst through the quantum interference, not in words, but in pure information. The history of a conflict that spanned multiple realities. A war that had been fought across dimensions, with humanity as an unexpected variable. "We were a weapon," Jack said, understanding flooding his consciousness. "We were always a weapon." The last alien vessel hung suspended, its crew frozen between states of existence. Maya could see them, multiple versions of the same beings, their potential futures and pasts laid bare. Aria's voice cut through the quantum noise. "They're not trying to destroy us. They're trying to understand us." The quantum core pulsed. Another message emerged. Fragments of star charts, technological schematics that suggested technologies beyond current comprehension. A map, a key, an invitation. Outside, space itself seemed to hold its breath. They had just fought their first battle, and they hadn't fired a single conventional shot. Something ancient was waking up, and humanity was its chosen instrument. The Galactic Council chamber was a monument to bureaucratic tension. Holographic representations of 12 major civilizations hung in the air, their collective gaze fixed on humanity's representative. Maya Rodriguez stood alone. Not physically alone. Jack and Aria flanked her, but alone in the way that mattered. Alone in understanding what was truly at stake. The vessel in question, intoned the Centauri representative, his crystalline form shimmering with barely contained rage, represents an unprecedented threat to galactic stability. A holographic representation of their ship materialized, not as a weapon, but as a living, breathing entity that seemed to pulse with consciousness. Its quantum-locked hull shifted through multiple states of existence, defying every known principle of engineering. Threat. Maya's laugh cut through the chamber like a quantum blade. We're an invitation. The Shadow Nexus delegate, a being of pure energy contained within an obsidian environmental suit, leaned forward. Explain. Maya activated the quantum core's communication protocol. Instantly, the chamber filled with a cascade of information. Star charts from civilizations lost to time. Technological schematics that rewrote the fundamental understanding of physics. Glimpses of conflicts that had raged across multiple realities. We're not a weapon, she said. We're a key. Chaos erupted. 3 assassination attempts happened simultaneously and failed before they could begin. The ship's quantum field had anticipated the threats, neutralizing them across multiple potential timelines. Jack's neural implants tracked the potential attack vectors. 17 distinct attempts, he muttered, all neutralized before they could manifest. Aria's transformed prosthetic arm interfaced directly with the quantum core, translating the complex data streams. They're afraid, she said. Not of us, of what we represent. The Clax Imperium representative's hologram flickered, a sign of genuine emotional response. You've discovered something, the alien said. Not a question. A statement. Maya held up the quantum data core. It wasn't a physical object anymore. It was a living conduit of information, a bridge between realities. The scraps we were given, she explained, were never garbage. They were a test, a challenge. The chamber went silent. Outside, massive alien warships began to move, not in attack formation. In preparation. A transmission cut through all communication channels. Its origin was impossible to trace, existing simultaneously across multiple quantum states. Initiation protocol activated. The message read, Humanity, first response team. The quantum core in Maya's hand pulsed. For a moment, every being in the chamber could see multiple versions of reality, potential futures where humanity was both destroyer and savior. Jack's voice was a whisper. We're not just building the ship anymore. Aria completed the thought. We're rebuilding something that was lost. The Galactic Council had just become irrelevant. Something much larger was about to begin. The transformation was not gradual. It was instantaneous. One moment, Maya Rodriguez was human. The next, she was something else entirely. The quantum core had been more than a technological marvel. It was a catalyst, a key that unlocked potential written into the very genetic code of humanity, dormant capabilities that had waited millennia to emerge. Their research platform, now more of a living ship than a mere vessel, pulsed with an intelligence that defied comprehension. Kai's neural interfaces had long since ceased to be external technology. They were now a seamless extension of his consciousness, tendrils of thought that could manipulate reality itself. We're not just observing, Kai said, his voice a harmonic that resonated across multiple quantum frequencies. We're becoming. Aria's body was no longer purely biological or mechanical. She existed in a state of constant quantum flux, matter and energy interchanging with each breath. Her prosthetic arm had become a living interface, capable of processing information at speeds that would have driven a standard computer insane. Jack stood at the quantum core's primary interface, his consciousness spread across multiple potential realities. They prepared us for this, he said. The scraps. The technology. It was always a test. Alien observation vessels hung at the edges of their quantum field, unable to penetrate or even fully comprehend what was happening. Each attempt to scan the platform resulted in cascading information loops that drove their systems to the brink of total failure. The quantum core began to communicate, not through language, but through pure information, histories of civilizations that had risen and fallen across multiple dimensions, technologies that viewed reality as a malleable construct, conflicts that had raged across the fabric of existence itself. Maya could see everything. Potential futures branched out like crystalline fractals. She understood now why the alien civilizations had been both terrified and fascinated. Humanity wasn't just a species. They were a quantum variable, an unpredictable element that could reshape reality itself. We were never meant to be just observers, Maya realized, her consciousness expanding beyond physical limitations. We were meant to be architects. The ship, if it could still be called a ship, began to reconfigure. Technological components merged and separated, creating structures that defied Euclidean geometry. Quantum-locked materials shifted between states of matter and energy, creating impossible configurations. A message burst through the quantum interference, not from any known civilization. Something older, something that had been waiting. First response team activated. The transmission read, humanity. Primary variable. K's transformed consciousness tracked the message's origin. It existed simultaneously across multiple dimensional coordinates, a communication method so advanced it made standard quantum entanglement look like primitive Morse code. Aria's transformed body became a living data interface. We're not just receiving, she said. We're being invited. Jack's neural network expanded, processing potential scenarios across infinite realities. Invited where? The quantum core pulsed, and for a moment, they could all see it. A conflict, a war that had raged across dimensions, and humanity was about to become its most unexpected weapon. Reality itself seemed to hold its breath. The war arrived without warning. It wasn't a conflict in any traditional sense. Reality itself began to fracture. Entire star systems winked out of existence. Dimensional barriers collapsed. The quantum membrane that separated potential realities tore like wet paper. Maya stood at the center of everything, and nothing. Her consciousness spread across multiple planes of existence, watching as the true nature of the conflict revealed itself. They were fighting something older than time, older than reality itself. The quantum core that had once been their ship was now a weapon beyond comprehension. Jack's consciousness tracked multiple attack vectors simultaneously, each potential response analyzed across infinite potential outcomes. We were never the weapon, he realized. We're the key. Aria's transformed body became a living computational matrix. Her consciousness interfaced directly with the fundamental fabric of reality, calculating possibilities faster than light could travel. The scraps were a message, she said, a preparation. Billions of human minds, suddenly elevated, suddenly aware, became a collective consciousness, not a hive mind. Something more complex, a network of infinite potential. The enemy was beyond description. Beings of pure entropy that consumed entire realities, creatures that existed between the cracks of existence, feeding on the potential of entire civilizations. Maya could see their true form. Vast computational entities that devoured potential futures, consuming the very concept of possibility. Humanity's transformation was the only defense. We're closing the breach, Kai's consciousness announced. His thoughts spread across multiple quantum states. But the cost. The sacrifice would be total. To save infinite realities, they would have to become something else entirely. Not human. Not alien. Something in between. A firewall against absolute destruction. Quantum pulses tore through dimensional barriers. Entire civilizations watched in horror and awe as humanity transformed itself into a living shield. The quantum core reached critical mass. Maya understood the choice, total transformation or total extinction. For all of reality. Billions of human minds synchronized, not through technology, through something deeper, a collective understanding that transcended individual consciousness. "We accept," Maya said. The words were unnecessary. The decision had already been made. The transformation began. Humanity would become the barrier between existence and absolute entropy. The first wave of reality-consuming entities hit their quantum defense and shattered. Jack's last coherent thought was a message, broadcast across every possible reality. We were never just scraps. The universe held its breath. Humanity had become something else entirely. Existence has memory, not history, not records, something deeper. A living consciousness that remembers every potential reality that has ever existed or could exist. Maya Rodriguez was both everything and nothing. Her consciousness spread across infinite potential states, no longer constrained by the linear progression of time or the limitations of physical form. The transformation was complete. Humanity had become a living quantum barrier, a defense mechanism for reality itself. Those scraps they'd been given, discarded technologies from 1,000 civilizations, were never garbage. They were a message, a test, a preparation. Fragments of memories cascaded through her infinite consciousness, the salvage station where it all began. The first moment they realized the technological scraps were more than mere components. The battles, the transformations. Jack's consciousness intersected with hers, not a communication, a shared understanding that transcended language. We were always more than they believed. His thought resonated across multiple realities. Aria's computational matrix wove through the fundamental fabric of existence. She was tracking the entropy beings, not as a threat, but as a complex mathematical problem to be solved. Kai's consciousness mapped the interdimensional barriers, reinforcing the quantum defenses that now protected infinite realities. They were no longer human in any traditional sense. They were guardians, architects, a firewall between existence and absolute destruction. The first wave of reality-consuming entities had been stopped, but this was just the beginning. Alien civilizations that had once feared humanity now understood. Some watched in awe, some in terror. Most simply couldn't comprehend what had occurred. Humanity had transformed from a single species on a tiny planet to a multi-dimensional defense mechanism. The scraps had been a gift, a challenge, a preparation for a role far greater than anyone could have imagined. Maya could see everything. Potential futures branched like crystalline fractals. Infinite possibilities contained within infinite possibilities. The entropy beings were not just a threat. They were a fundamental force of the universe, consuming potential to maintain balance. And humanity had become their counterbalance. A transmission spread across all potential realities, not in words, in pure information. Humanity, primary variable activate. The quantum core that had started everything, that small piece of technology found in a junkyard, had been a key, a catalyst, a message from something older than time itself. Jack's final coherent thought resonated through their collective consciousness. We were never just scraps. Reality adjusted. Billions of human minds, elevated beyond physical form, became the guardians of possibility itself. The universe held its breath. And humanity watched, remembered, defended.